Okay, let's get started. Good evening, everyone. Today, Lead in India partners with Sipping Thoughts to bring you a session on reflections of a leader, dimensions of a crisis, and how does one lead with Suresh Narayanan. He's the chairman and MD of Nestlé India, as you may be aware. This is one of our many sessions in our leadership series, a program that brings thought leaders from different walks of life to talk about their words of wisdoms on varied topics. We've had sessions in the past with Nandita Das, Apurva Purohit, Vanita Bali, former MD Britannia Industries, and Anuaga. Mr. Narayanan's talk today will cover aspects, characteristics, and the factors that humans and leaders have to keep in mind in dealing with any crisis, such as the one we are dealing with today. There are personal reflections and learnings from having been in difficult situations in the past. I'm Urvi Juneja, chapter leader at Lean in India. We're going to be talking about our partners. We're partnering with Sipping Thoughts. Sipping Thoughts is a multi-platform media company co-founded by Sukirti Gupta and Meeta Gudgutia. It was set up keeping in mind the tagline, Real Women, Real Thoughts, a no-judgment platform where they want to create a network of women for women. And about Lean in India, Lean in India is the official national chapter for Lean in India. Its Lean In is a community founded by Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg that empowers women to achieve their ambitions. Lean in India aims to contribute towards encouraging more women in leadership positions through peer circles, campaigns, collaborations, and events. Our aim is to increase representation of women in leadership positions by enabling more women in the workforce. So now about our speaker today, Suresh Narayanan has over 35 years of rich and exhaustive experience in the FMCG industry and has held senior management and top leadership roles in leading global companies. He's on the board of directors of Nestlé India. Suresh was chairman and CEO of Nestlé Philippines prior to joining Nestlé India in 2015. He's been honored at the Forbes India Leadership Awards 2017 as the best CEO in the multinational category. He was recognized among the most valuable CEOs in 2019 by Business World and also awarded Best CEO FMCG for 2019 by Business Today. Under his leadership in 2019, Nestlé India won the Best Governed Company Award for 2018 by Asian Center for Corporate Governance and Sustainability. With this, I'm going to hand over to Suresh to lead the session. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Urvi, and thank you, Sukirti, for your very kind invitation to come and share reflections in leadership. Now, I must confess at the start that for those who are expecting that there will be a lot of fresh stuff coming out of business schools, latest in the literature on leadership, I'm afraid you will be in for a bit of a disappointment. What I might be talking to you are all concepts that you would be 100% familiar with, but possibly have not had the time to reflect on in your own journey. I'm also aware that while I'm addressing a lean-in forum, so I do expect that there will be a lot more women than men joining in, I presume. But nevertheless, I shall make one thing very, very clear, that this is not a talk that is meant to be either condescending, superior, or deferential towards women or towards the role that they play in the lives of humans and indeed in the sustenance of the planet. These are more personal reflections, and that's really what it is worth. I've had during the course of a fairly long career of more than 35 odd years to have been, ladies and gentlemen, witness to numerous crises. In some sense, I consider myself a kind of a magnet towards a crisis. I either fall into one or I create one. And I think at this late stage of my career, I do reflect on the fact that maybe God willed it in this particular way, that I should be exposed to different kinds of crises and find ways and means of swimming against the tide, or really battling a ship in the storm and coming out at a safer end if I'm able to do that at all. A few things before I really talk about reflecting on a crisis. The first thing is that crisis doesn't come with a calling card. I think it is impossible for you to time a crisis and to say that, yeah, this is a crisis coming on. It starts small. Sometimes it starts nondescript, and it builds itself into a huge catastrophe. Look at the current pandemic. It began in Wuhan. It began as a few people inflicted with the virus, and then lo and behold, it transformed itself into the worst crisis that at least we, our generation and the generation before and after, have witnessed in their lives. So it is something that is true of most crises. It doesn't come with a calling card. And as Count Leo Tolstoy said in Anna Karenina, he says, happy families are alike. Unhappy families are unhappy in their own way. And that is true about crises as well. Good times last as good times for everyone. We are all happy, we are all in it together. We have fun while it lasts. We make money, we create assets, we build families, and we have a happy time. But unhappy moments are unhappy to a person, unhappy to a family, unhappy to a circumstance, unhappy to society. And there are no magic bullets, there are no answers, there are no business contingency plans, as they say in the corporate world, that can deal with all of these situations. But then, as all of you are leaders, and as all of you either work in enterprises, run establishments, part of establishments, all of you play the role of a leader. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to getting to do what you've been paid for all these years. No corporate is paying you for the good times. They are paying you for your capability, for your expertise, for your commitment, for your loyalty, for your passion, for your tenacity, for your capability to anticipate in bad times. So therefore, that is really what crisis is all about. And one of the things that I have noticed in any crisis, big or small, and in a crisis of the kind that we are facing in the pandemic, I have been a corporate leader for the better part of my life. But I can tell you one thing hand on heart, that in a crisis, you do not run a company, but you serve a family. And I think the faster you realize that you are actually serving a family, the family of people, families that depend on what you do, how you behave, how you act, and how your organization acts. On this depends the lives, the livelihoods, and the sustenance of thousands and thousands of people. You could be an enterprise with 5 people, but those 5 people would be consisting of about a dependency of another 10 odd people or 15 odd people. And they in turn will depend on others. And this is the way in which a family notion is always very important in a crisis of this kind. Because honestly, none of us, we know how this pandemic is going to pan out. What are going to be the consequences? What is going to be the devastation? Every day you and I are reading and seeing in the papers the devastation, the economic devastation, the complete misery to which ordinary people leading ordinary lives have been subjected. Do we know when it will end? Do we know how it will end? Do we know when the vaccine will come? Do we know when all of us will get vaccinated? Do we know when the world will be a safer place to live and to travel and to be social animals the way nature has created us to be? We have no idea. And that is the reason why humility is important. It is important to be humble. It is not important to be a know-all. It is important to be vulnerable. It is not important to be testosterone-laden and completely macho about this crisis. I don't think any of that is going to work. At least that is my personal belief. So what are a few things that I believe are important when you are leading a crisis, when you are in the midst of a crisis? The first and most important I have noticed in my own career is managing yourself. If you are able to manage yourself, you are capable of managing an adversity far better. If you cannot manage yourself, you are not able to manage a crisis. What do I mean by that? The first element of managing yourself is acceptance. Acceptance that this is a crisis. Acceptance of the fact that you have to wear a mask, you have to social distance yourself, and this particular virus is lethal, is brutal. It doesn't care whether you're a millionaire, a male or a female, or X, Y, and Z religion, or whatever you are. It comes and gets you and hits you, and sometimes hits you so hard that it ruins your family for generations. Therefore, you have to accept it. You have to accept that we are in a crisis. The attitude should not be one of panic. The attitude should be one of calmness. When you are in the midst of a storm, there's no point in panicking. That panic doesn't add any more weight to the storm. It only makes your resolve that much less. So your attitude is important. Your behavior is important. Your people are looking at you. You may be a leader of an organization of 5 people or 500,000 people, but your people are looking up to you. They are saying, my God, this is a completely incomprehensible pandemic in my life. I don't know whether I'll live. I don't know whether I'll have my job. I don't know whether I'm going to survive 5 years. I don't know what my savings is going to be. I don't know whether my family and friends are going to be safe. Whom do I look to? They look to you. And that is why it is very important that you as a leader stand strong. You may be quaking in your boots because you don't have the answers. Still stand strong. If not for yourself, for the people around you, because the day you start quaking, the day your behavior becomes erratic, the day anger precedes sobriety, the day reason is quashed by accidents, is the time when you fail as a leader. Most crises in organizations are not created by lousy strategies. Few times it is, most time it is fomented by lousy leadership. And this is the time when that is important. Managing yourself means managing your activity. How active are you? You could be work from home, but are you exercising enough? Are you having time for reflection? Are you spending time with your family? If you're a married man or a married woman, are you spending enough time with your spouse, with your children? Are you addressing the issues that need to be addressed? And finally, building resilience. Resilience is that single most important characteristic that says, I will come back, I'll bounce back. I will get back to it, I'll get back to the times. I will still have hope in my heart. There is uncertainty, but there is hope in your heart. And I think that is important. So managing yourself is extremely important. The next, managing your people. I already talked about it. And how do you manage your people? You don't have the answers. You only have questions. You know probably as much as they do, maybe sometimes even less. So how are you going to manage a difficult situation of the kind where you don't know the answers to many of the questions that they are asking you? Because you have the same questions. I think authenticity is the most important at this stage. Empathy. What do I mean by empathy? Empathy is that capability for you to be able to understand the other person's feelings. You may not have all the answers to it, but you have to be able to understand. This is the time when you have a lot of unresolved grief around you. People have lost their jobs. Their incomes have gone. They've lost friend and family. There have been huge loss of property, economic loss. People have lost loved ones, not participated in their funeral. That is the kind of worst suffering that a human being goes through. Unresolved grief will be one of the biggest issues coming out of this pandemic. How are we going to face it as human beings? We have to find a vent for it. We have to find a way of releasing it. You as the leader will have to sense it and give them that vent. Give them that release valve so that they're able to release all the unresolved grief and unresolved misery that they carry with themselves. At this time, it is authenticity. At this time, you have to come across the way you are and the person you are, not what you would like to be. And I think that is going to be a very, very challenging situation. All the credibility and cachet that you have developed as a leader now comes to fore. You need to understand not just the work from home conditions, but also the conditions of your colleagues. I know that in my own organization, there are a number of women colleagues who face a dual sledgehammer of managing work and managing families. It's not easy. It is difficult. People have mental health and stress issues. As an organization, you have to reach out. As a leader, you have to reach out. Because this is not the time for you to say, look, I'm afraid this has to be done and that's the way it is. To me, what is important at this point in time is protecting your people. That was the first and the only thought that came in my mind, was to protect my people. Protect the purpose of the organization. Purpose and values are not simple words that are put down in statements emblazoned on the walls of establishments. Purpose is the raison d'etre. It is the soul of your organization. Values is what you have lived by. And if you are trying to incidentally create a culture at the time of a pandemic, good luck to you. If you have not invested in culture in good times, you will not reap the kavach that it is in bad times. Culture defines the unspoken language of an organization. I am very proud that I belong to a culture that is an old culture, a 155-year-old company, a 108-year-old culture in India. I'm very proud of it because there are various things that are unsaid, and yet people do it. When a salesman of mine working in Sikkim walks for 3 days continuously to get permission to distribute our products, that is an unspoken reflection of the culture of the company. Do I give him something extra? I don't. Do I give him a medal? I don't. And yet he does it. Why does he do it? He does it because he believes that it is his task in his particular area to serve the consumer as best as he can. When a person in Indore wants to save the life of a young girl who has been hit with a paralytic attack and needs one of our brands called Peptamen urgently, this gentleman has it got across from Ahmedabad and personally gives it to the parents so that they can save the life of their daughter. Why does he do it? He does it because he stands tall and he speaks to a value of the organization. He speaks to a purpose of the organization. So dwell on it, talk on it, act on it, and that is important. Address the fears of your people. The first fear that my people had within the first week or within the first 2-3 weeks was, am I going to have my job? Or am I going to be laid off? So I went and I said up front, as your leader, it is my solemn promise that with the grace of God and with the help of all of you, I want to protect every single job. Because a job is not just a mode of earning a salary, it is our self-respect. And I do not and I will not trample on your self-respect. So address their fears. Don't think that it is not important to communicate. This is the time to communicate. Communicate simply, communicate empathetically, communicate authentically, and yet touch upon the fears with clarity, with simplicity, and with transparency. That's what your people expect. They don't expect you to be Albert Einstein. They don't expect you to be poet Rabindranath Tagore. They don't expect you to be the eloquence of a great politician at speech. They just want clarity, simplicity, transparency, and a humanness. That is what they miss out. So all the things that I tried to do was around employees, around my factory workers, around my frontline salesmen. I'm very proud of the fact that in Nestlé, we introduced a insurance for COVID for all the frontline distributor salesmen. These are all ordinary people, 10, 12,000 rupees a month. They all have families. What is going to happen to them if COVID turns nasty with them? Who's going to take care of them? We don't have a social security system. So as a company, we said we will insure them. We will insure them so that God forbid if anything happens, they are protected. I think this is a time of compassion. Your profits, your shareholder returns, the great benefits and the great plaudits that you would get on the stock markets will only happen if your people are protected, your people are productive, and your people are passionate. It will not happen otherwise. We are all not leading corporations where results happen automatically. Third element, managing the business. And I think this is the time when you have to keep your emotions out of the door. Managing your people is all about emotions and all about clarity. Managing the business is all about facts. This is the time when you have to take the tough calls. Assessment is collective. The decision is yours. The buck stops at your door and you have to take accountability as a leader. You can't say, look, all my 10 fellows told me to do it. I did it, but then it went wrong. This is the time to manage your cash cycle. Most companies are struggling to get in the cash. If you don't get in the cash, you have consequences in terms of operations. I know, I do appreciate, I'm blessed to be in a company where the impact on the business, while it has been there, has not been as significant as for me to look at things like retrenchment. But you might have to look at retrenchment. You might have to look at salary reductions. You might have to look at furloughs. You might have to look at all kinds of mechanisms to ensure that there is a business longevity. How are you going to do it? You're going to do it by taking decisions with empathy, decisions fairly. You may decide that some people may have to go. It's a tough decision, but do that humanely. Do that keeping in view the fact that if it were to happen to you, how would you react? Sometimes as leaders, we forget, we think that, okay, this is an employment code. He's got an employment code and you're worried about an employment code. Don't look at an individual as an employment code. He's a man or a woman. He has a family, he has children, he has responsibilities. And you need to treat him humanely. As Larry Bossidy said, the chairman of Honeywell, you will never be remembered for the profits you made, for the turnovers and the growth that you delivered. You will be remembered for how you made the other man feel. That's the only legacy you are going to leave behind. So all this ego, all these grandiose plans that you've got, the story about Alexander the Great, they say that when this mid-30s conqueror of the world died, he left his palms open. I come with nothing, I go with nothing. And I think that is the legacy of our lives, that we will come with nothing, we will go with nothing. But at this time in your business, when you have to take the tough calls, ensure that all your elements of costs are looked at. Postpone it, reduce it, cut it, do whatever you can to enhance efficiencies. Move with speed. This is the golden moment for empowering and enabling your people. I love this moment in my organization because my youngsters will get more authority in their hands. The old bureaucracies will fall apart because you can't afford it. You can't have it anymore. So some youngster will take the decision, run with it, and then he will ensure that things happen in the company. Fourth element, managing the environment. I think it's all hands on deck. It's all hands on deck. You have to set up a close-knit COVID crisis committee. I have a crisis committee that I chair. Every second day we meet. And one of the things what we did was that, every meeting we were starting with the COVID statistics. Till I told the coordinator of that meeting, I said, let us start every meeting with an inspiring story. Somebody who has done something unique during this period. It's a good way to segue into the bitterness and into the bad news that we have later on. And so many inspiring stories this lady has shared with us on organizations, on people, on enterprises, how they have pivoted themselves. I go back to managing yourself. How has a leader pivoted himself because he has decided that I will be positive about it. I will look at this as an opportunity. And I think these are the times in the environment where the key calls are yours as a CEO. You have to be fast, you have to be focused, you have to be flexible, if you have to be formidable. If you don't do any of these three, I'm afraid you're not going to have very much of an opportunity. Last, manage the fallout. There will be a fallout. And this is when you speak to your purpose. There is a balance sheet, but you speak to your purpose. There is a profit and loss statement, but you speak to your purpose. There is loans on your balance sheet, liabilities on your balance sheet, and yet you speak to your purpose. This is the time to reach out. This is the time for you to look beyond your own immediate profitability and your own immediate health. This is the time to behave like a banyan tree to protect everyone that is under it. And I have tried to do that as a company to the best of my abilities. We work with 100,000 farmers in the Punjab. They've been giving us milk every single day for the last 60 years. 100,000 farmers. And yes, 78,000 out of the 100,000 are women farmers. They've been giving milk to us every single day from their dairy farms. At this time, I could have just said, look, I'm sorry, I don't know what to do with your milk. But we said, no, we will take every drop of milk. Trust. These are old-fashioned words. Trust is so very important. You help with a helping hand in times of a crisis. You have bought a person's trust for life. This is the time that you need to stand up and be counted. We've done that with all our small suppliers. Everyone is being monitored by the company. How many orders do they have? Are they capable of doing the operations? What help do they need in doing the operations? Do they need some cash? Do they need some advance payments? Do they need some prompt payments? What are the things that they need? Because I don't want any of them to go belly up. That will be sad. As it is, we have a crisis. And if large corporates decide that they're going to wash their hands off, then we are going to be in a worse situation. So I believe that these 5 elements, managing yourselves, managing your people, managing your business, managing the environment, and managing the fallout, has really been my learnings of different crises, whether it was the Maggie crisis, or whether it was my 5 years in Egypt during the Arab Spring, or indeed when it was during the Lehman Brothers meltdown in Singapore. These are some of the things that I have learned. These are some of the beliefs that have remained close to me. And yes, sometimes I've succeeded, sometimes I have failed, and yet I continue to strive. I continue to strive because I believe in the power of people. I believe in the power of the human being. I believe in the power of every woman and every man in my organization. They are created unique and they are capable. So that's really what I wanted to share with you as opening thoughts on reflections on leadership.
Thank you, Suresh. That was really insightful and actually coming straight from the heart, because you've seen a lot of different type of crises. And I hate to start the first question off with a gender-based question, but a lot, especially during the crisis, has been talked about how women leaders are leading differently than men leaders. And especially case in point, the countries with women leaders have done better in managing the COVID crisis. So the success of these women in these challenging times have led to a lot of people comparing men and women and their leadership styles. Do you really believe there's a difference between the way men and women lead?
Look, I must say that, look, I've seen in my own career outstanding men leaders and terrible men leaders, and also outstanding women leaders and lousy women leaders. So, and I think this gender typification is something that I find it a little very uncomfortable, and in the extreme, I find it very condescending. And I hate to sound condescending because I have no business to be condescending on it. But I believe that women have a few advantages in difficult situations. The first thing is women don't bring egos, and they don't bring this I have to win at any cost macho mentality to a discussion. For men, there is always a tendency to put their ego before the problem. That, I have to come out looking bright. So people have to say that Suresh Narayanan, you're the best leader that Nestlé has ever had in the last 200 years, right? You're more concerned about that because it's some stupid illusion that you've got of grandeur that may or may not ever happen, but you still have it. So I think the first thing is ego, and this winning at any cost that women don't bring to the table. Number two, I believe, and this is more from my own experience. I mean, I have a wife and I have a very proud father of a daughter. I believe that women have better sensing skills. You are able to sense a situation much better. Men tend to be very factual about things. They are not able to go beyond a certain, I'm not saying all men are like that, so therefore please don't take it as a generic statement, but they're not able to go below the surface, whereas a woman is able to see through the situation and assess it far better. And the third is, I think, because of the way you are wired, women come across in difficult situations far more empathetically, far more compassionately, and in fact, they attract by nature of who they are a lot more of comfort seeking people, saying, can you help me out? Can you do? But whereas for a man, sometimes the hierarchy comes in the way. They say, look, why should I go to him? Why don't I go to somebody else? So I think there is an advantage. But I must say, I don't want to sound controversial, but I've also seen all women teams led by a woman, sometimes not, sometimes getting dysfunction, because I think it's you're so critical about yourselves by and large, and seeking excellence in all that you do, that you're not able to probably accept a certain kind of less than perfect behavior coming out of the people who work in your team.
So true, so true. Go ahead, Urvi.
Yeah. So, we all understand that this is an unprecedented crisis. And, from what you've just said, you seem to be a total pioneer at handling such crisis gracefully and sort of coming out of it with huge success. What are your learnings from such times that you believe are also applicable for normal times?
I think it's a good question, Urvi. For me, my number one, my focus on people, purpose, and partnerships. This is true in good times. It's true in bad times. As the poet Kabir once said, he said, "Dukh mein sumiran sab kare, sukh mein kare na koi. Jo sukh mein sumiran kare, dukh kahe ko hoy." You keep praying only in bad times. You don't pray in good times. But if you pray in good times, why should you ever see the sadness of bad times? So I think it's important. People, purpose, and partnerships for me are absolutely important. Number two, the values that you stand by. For me, respect and dignity are extremely important. I don't care whether you're a man or woman. I don't care whether you're serving me tea or whether you're the chairman of my company. You will get exactly the same respect and the same regard and the same dignity from me, because you're human. And I think I have no business to start throwing an accident of birth or a privilege of luck on you and demeaning you. So to me, I think respect is very, very important. And number three is walking the talk on behaviors and building the culture. If companies were to spend more time on culture than CapEx, I think we will have a lot more successful companies. Today, companies are building glitzy offices, fancy factories, great setup for their people, cafeterias, lounges, bars, name it. But the culture is caustic. And when you have a caustic, toxic culture, when people are not happy getting up every morning and coming to work, and I always count myself into that. The day I feel unhappy getting up in the morning and going to work is the day I tell my people, seek a change, because you're not happy. And if you're not happy, you're not going to make anybody else happy. So I think these two or three things, which is purpose, people, and partnerships, focusing on values, and number three is building and walking the talk on culture, are three essentials in good times and in bad times. And if you don't have it in good times, you will not be able to build this kavach in bad times.
I think beautifully said. Like you said, that this is not the time to build culture. It's really, the time to practice your value system. So
exactly.
So Kirti, over to you.
Yeah, that leads me to my next question. Like you said, nobody can prepare for a crisis. Maybe a lot of companies have also not prepared for this. And now the bad times have come. So how can they now, because we have been pushed into this, so what should they be doing and how can they prepare themselves now that they're in the midst of this?
Look, I think every organization has to seek its own answers and own learnings coming out of this crisis. Every company will have its own learnings. So number one is, I think really introspection on probably three core areas. Number one is on people, behaviors, and outcomes. How did they fare? think dispassionately, think calmly, think without ego, think without any recrimination on how the people, structures, and outcomes have happened during the period of the pandemic. Number one. Number two, what are the opportunities that your business offers you now post-pandemic? And what are the areas of your company or your enterprise or whatever you're doing that is dysfunctional? And what do you need to do about it? And number three, can you see a road ahead? You don't have to define every inch of the road. You don't have to define every bridge that you will cross. But do you see a road ahead? And if so, what is that road? And how is it different from the road that you are on? So if you look at these three things, apart from a lot of other things that you look at in terms of business, etc., I'm not going to that, you will have a reasonably good idea on what do I need to do to get ahead. But above all, I think a leader has to have the courage to jettison the infirmities of the past and some of the legacies of the past to embrace a new future. It may be brighter, it may be different, it may be good, it may be bad, time will tell. But the problem for most of the leaders is letting go. We don't want to let go of things that we have got in our head as experiences. And I think that is probably going to be the biggest challenge of this pandemic, letting go of legacies and looking forward to new dimensions of growth and change.
No, thank you for reminding us about courage, especially the courage and especially letting go. I think that's tough for all of us, no matter at what level we are at. I think Urvi, yeah.
Picking the threads from there, we have seen that some businesses are really thriving in this pandemic. The crisis has opened a plethora of opportunities for them. They are innovating. They have new opportunities lined up. So do these leaders of such companies do something differently to make sure their businesses thrive in such times?
Look, I think there are probably two or three things that are intrinsic. I don't know whether they do things differently or not, but there are probably two or three mental mind spaces that they operate in. Number one is they are not stuck on their business models for life. They are basically receptive to changes that are happening, and they're willing to make amends and to make changes along with the changes that have been inflicted upon them as a result of this. So I think receptivity and the capability of redefining boldly your business model or your whatever proposition you got, that number one is important. Number two is calculating your risks of change and yet embracing change. You need to know that there would be a couple of risks in doing whatever I'm going to be doing, but you are saying it is well worth it rather than staying static and becoming like a frog in water that is boiling from below. You see, the adage of the frog with water boiling from below is when a frog realizes it, it tries to jump out. But there are some frogs who boil along with the water, right? And I think that's the second characteristic. And the third one is, I think, anticipation. The future is going to reward organizations with two characteristics: anticipation and resilience. So the capability to be able to anticipate the next curve or the next inflection point, I think that is going to make companies. And resilience, the capability for you to be able to navigate it, come out stronger. So these are probably the reasons why leaders, some leaders succeed. And the last but not the least, I come back to that caustic three-letter word, ego. If you are caught up in the ego of your greatness, in the legacy of your past, in the grandioseness of the history that has defined you, you can sometimes become a victim of it. And I think this pandemic is going to teach some people that lesson.
So
So, from what I hear, change and resilience seem to be the two constants, that we all need to stick to at all times. Nice, very nice. So,
So
Kirti.
yeah, but change and resilience, although we talk a lot about this, one sector that's been particularly badly hit are a lot of the freshers, the students, the people that are graduating. So they were very excited either to go to school, go abroad, or take a job. And now they're a little bit shaky about their future. What is your advice to them, as most companies are right now not looking at expanding?
Look, I think Sukirti, you're asking a question that is very that that disturbs me a lot. That worries me a lot because I hate the thought that we could have a lost generation of people without opportunities, without jobs, and without uh, decent, productive livelihoods. So, and this is for no fault of theirs. It just so happens that they are whatever born in the 90s and facing this situation today. So I think there are a couple of things that that corporates can do. And one of the things that we did at Nestle is we just announced last month 1,000 internships called Nesternships for open to graduates in their final year, master's degree holders, engineers, food technologists, whatever discipline. You apply for it. We give you a paid internship, which is an online internship. You have a mentor. You also have guidance on CV writing, on interviewing skills, etc. Why did we do it? We did it because we felt as a team that, look, this is the only way in which we can contribute positively to these youngsters to at least build up the skills for the workplace. And Nestle is a good name to be on your CV. If I can give you a 1 month experience or a 2 month experience, it can help. It is more pressure on the organization, but I welcome that pressure because I'm able to do something positive. Now you'll be surprised, Sukirti, we had 91,000 applicants. 91,000. It tells you the extent of the problem. It tells you the extent of the problem. So really, I think my advice to youngsters at this stage is basically 2 or 3 things. Number one, don't lose your self-respect. I think the biggest problem is that kids are losing their self-respect. They feel that they are failures. They feel that, I haven't got this job. I haven't, people have walked away from resonating offers, resonating internships. I think it is sad. Companies are doing it for whatever reason. I'm not going to make judgments on that, but it is very sad. So I think don't lose your self-respect and your self-confidence. Number two is take what comes your way and learn. Right? This is not the time for you to get choosy. I know many of us have encouraged kids to have choices. And for those parents on the call, I would say this is a time to hold your children's hand. This is not the time to tell them, but you went to IIT, you went to IIM, you went to this institution, Papa spent 30 lakhs of rupees and you have nothing to show for it. I think it's cruel. It's cruel. So I really, and I find this generation such a decent generation. And I really wish that they have more people whom they can be inspired by. When I was growing up, I had a lot more people that I was inspired by. Today, when I look around, I say, look, whom am I going to be inspired by? And I think sometimes inspiration also leads you to do things that is greater than what you are. And I think that's what are the examples that we need to create for young people.
So I would love to know who you're inspired by.
Pardon, who I am?
Who you are inspired by.
Oh, my inspiration, it is my 5 foot nothing, 8th standard educated maternal grandmother. I think she is the one who's inspired me the most. I mean, she has taught me the value of relationships, the value of a family, the value of touching the lives of people, the values of help and support, the values of decency, respect. I think she's the one. I had the privilege of kind of observing her as a young child. And I think for me, it is not business leaders who have been my inspiration. It has been my nani, as it were, who's my inspiration.
Very sweet, very, very nice.
Excellent. So I'm going to now ask my favorite question. It's going to be the last question before we move on to audience. So we all know the Maggie crisis that happened for Nestle. I wanted to specifically understand, as part of some questions, what was your learning out of it? So my questions are, was the government cooperative in the process? How did the media behave in this whole process? Was the Maggie situation real, or was it made up by the government authorities who wanted to hurt Nestle when you did not grease their arms?
Look, I think these are very straight questions, and let me take some of them. Number one, it was not done by anybody because we failed to grease somebody's palm. So that is completely untrue. I am a dead honest person, and I can tell you with all the sincerity, no one asked me for a bribe. I didn't offer a bribe, and I don't think it is very, very unfair to make those kind of statements. I think it was what really happened was it was a regulatory call that was taken on the brand. I think some of the testing methodologies, unfortunately, were horribly wrong, and that led to very, very erroneous results. This is a classic situation where, as an organization, we chose to approach the matter to begin with on facts. We said, look, we are the world's largest consumer goods company and also the largest food, beverage, and nutrition company. For us, food quality and safety is the center of who we are as a company. I mean, you may not like our ads, you may not like our posters, but one thing that Nestle swears by is food quality and safety. That's what we are known, and that's why we have global factories. We don't have first world quality and second world quality and third world quality. It's one uniform quality. Everything is the same globally. So therefore, I think that was something that we thought that it was a factual kind of misalignment, and that's where I think initially, when we were a little bit quiet in our response, is when we found ourselves in a perfect storm. You see, that was a perfect storm, 2015, where there was no GST, there was no demonetization, there was no prominent politicians and celebrities going at each other's throats. Nothing was happening. So it was this poor brand that is the favorite of millions of consumers that got center stage. And I think that's why it took the kind of rap that it took. But I think, again, thanks to the purpose, people, partnerships, the values, the humility, and the fact that we are a decent organization that is not the least bit interested in doing anything that is going to harm any consumer. And that is the reason why we came out of it strongly. And in the pandemic, we were probably one of the most demanded brands from households. Right, Maggie became the number one brand that people wanted to buy because you could not go out and do whatever you wanted to.
Sure, it's amazing how you sort of came back to not only normal but beyond normal, and people literally just go back to Maggie and they say they want it again and again and again. So it is literally people's favorite brand today.
Yeah, it is the comfort food. With that, I'd ask Damini to start our Q&A. Damini?
Yeah, hello, sir. And so many people are resonating with every word that you have said. And, a lot of questions are coming up. But one question that we would like to first start off with is, you've talked about, what a leader should be doing and, showing empathy and everything to to the people who are working for them. But at this time, is having too much of empathy and sympathy is a burden for leaders as well? And how do you take care of yourself as a leader when you are burdened? Yeah.
It's a very good question. If you look at, if you think that empathy, sympathy, and compassion are burdens, then don't even try and practice it. Empathy, sympathy, compassion is the language of human beings to connect to each other. I mean, I think the Dalai Lama said it beautifully. He said the least utilized emotion for human beings and the most abundant is compassion. And yet we don't use it. So if you really think that empathy, sympathy, and compassion are burdens, then I think you should be not practicing it, because you are going to tire yourself out. You are going to come out most inauthentic. And possibly as a result, your people will start feeling worse, because it is one thing to be empathetic. It is another thing to be looking deferential or looking condescending or trying to appear as if you're doing a lot of charitable gestures to people. It has to be felt. And if you don't feel it, then I believe that it is a burden for you. And if it's a burden for you, have somebody else in your team demonstrate it to your people.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So our next question is from Revati. Revati, please go ahead.
Hello, sir. It's very glad to connect with you from my part through the Zoom. And my question is it essential to employ an mental health specialist in the organization to ensure the wellness of the employees? Beside the pandemic situation, the company, beside the company's progress and everything, every employees might come across certain ups and downs in their life personally. So do you think it is essential to recruit a full-time mental health specialist to ensure the wellness of the company and the employees as well?
It's a very good question. But let me put it this way, and I think you've hit a very important point. It is not that mental health issues are only affecting in the pandemic. They were there even before. Maybe it was of a different kind, but it was there before. What we do as a company is we don't employ people directly, because we have more than 7,500 employees. So it's very difficult to kind of have this across the organization in the numbers. But we have engaged platforms that is open to people. You can join these platforms, and in fact, some of our people even before the pandemic have joined it in terms of counseling, in terms of problem resolution, in terms of relationships, in terms of other stresses, right? In terms of non-work related issues, sometimes even work related issues. So I think it is an important part. Human beings need a release valve. And I think some of the things, without taking names, I think in the recent past, you're seeing in the news how mental health issues are being sensationalized. And I think that is sad. The day a person with a genuine problem is not being heard, and you don't have a forum for it to be heard, I think you're doing a huge disservice to both that person and to employees at large. So I would really encourage, find a way. Maybe it's a specialist third-party way. We do it as a company. During the pandemic, we have accelerated it. We have a lot more of engagement programs, because now a lot of other things are adding to it. People are cooped up at home. Some of them stay in small apartments, right? Poor connectivity. You have the burden of not just your own family, but you've got in-laws and uncles and aunts and so many else. Your neighbor has got COVID. The neighbor's maid has got COVID, and you're panicking. So somebody needs to offer help. Somebody needs to reach out. And I think as organizations, if you can do it, or even as colleagues, if you can do it, I think it's a great idea.
Perfect. Ayushi, you're next. Ayushi, please go ahead.
Yes, hello, thank you. So I'm 21 years old, and my question is slightly not completely related to COVID, but just a generic question of sorts. What is your advice for aspiring entrepreneurs? And a choice that comes with choosing this is whether there's always an option of staying in corporate and going further up the ladder, and there's always the option of taking that leap and starting something of your own. So I personally resonated with every single aspect of leadership that you talked about, the purpose, people, partnership, everything. So what is your advice for aspiring entrepreneurs when it comes to making that choice?
I think firstly, all of you youngsters have the option of either being entrepreneurs or working like me in a corporate. When I was your age, and started my work. Unfortunately, entrepreneurship was not really much of an option. So you joined a corporate and you did whatever you did, but you are fortunate to have that. Firstly, if you're really passionate about it and you think you've got a great idea going and you're determined to stay the course, only then get into being an entrepreneur. Don't do an entrepreneurial task if it is as a second best option to taking a job, because then you will not succeed in it and you will not do what you should be doing. This is something that should fire your imagination and should fire your gut, saying, I want to do this because this is what is going to give me satisfaction and above all happiness in my life. Once you do that, I think you need to, apart from, of course, getting the business model and other things, look for the right kind of people. I find many young startups, they fail not because the business idea is bad, but because they got the wrong people and they set up the wrong kind of work practices. It's all nice to be free and to do what you feel like and to come and go when you want to. It's a great idea, but there is also merit in discipline and process and in defining things and who does it and when he does it and how he does it. I mean, there's nothing wrong in that. So I think some of these things are important for you to keep in mind. But honestly, if you are really fired by a business idea or by an entrepreneurial idea, go for it, because you're still young. You can try it. I mean, I don't want to sound negative about it, but let's say after 5 years it doesn't work. After 10 years it doesn't work. You still are young enough to make a transition. But if you're going to be at my age and suddenly say I'm going to start a business and not necessarily succeed in it, I think I have a lot to lose.
Thank you for that. And we are going to take our last question from Aditi. Aditi, please go ahead.
Thank you, Damini, and thanks to Sukirti and Urvi for this wonderful talk. Really so inspiring. And Suresh sir, just a question. So this is apart from really leadership as a topic, but how can FMCG as an industry really reimagine business in a post-pandemic world? A lot of businesses are thinking about anti-fragility, right? How can you improve in the post-pandemic? Really finding that opportunity in adversity. And, if you can talk about some key trends, something that you are doing around digitalization would be great to know.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think consumer goods industries are, you are seeing a lot of churn now in terms of consumer behaviors. I think some of the more obvious ones are really more in-home engagement of brands as compared to out-of-home. So out-of-home clearly has taken a knock, and I feel extremely sad because how many restaurants and thelawalas and hotels are really suffering because of this. And but that in some sense has moved in-home, part of it at least. There is a greater premium on trustworthiness, credibility of brands. You would rather go with a trusted name, and there companies like Nestlé have an advantage because we have got very, very old brands and very trusted brands. Number three is there is a greater focus on things like nutrition, and the credibility of the product is very, very important. You're not going to take chances and just pick up a product simply because the pack looks nice or the price is nice. Number four is, there's a new word in the lexicon of consumers, and it's a big word called immunity, right? Earlier, we never worried about things like immunity. Today, immunity for me, the self, the family, the kids, for everyone is becoming extremely important. And I think, sad to say, but because of the downturn in the economy and because of the job losses and unemployment and various other things, there has also been significant amount of downtrading that's taking place. Consumers are looking at either better value packs or looking at cheaper packs. So all of this is going to redefine the way in which consumer companies look at innovation. Companies look at route to market. I mean, the e-commerce boom has been phenomenal. I mean, this was never anticipated. A company like Nestlé, we had about 1% of our business coming from e-commerce. Today, it is 4% in less than a year. And I am, in my sector, in food and beverage, it's much less on e-commerce. as compared to some of the other categories, especially like mobile phones or like cosmetics or any of those clothes and stuff like that, much, much higher. So there has been a complete recalibration. The grocer has now become extremely important, right? The kirana dukan has become very, very vital because he's able to give you, if you're in a containment, he's the only guy who can supply you. He can give you assortment, he can give you credit, he's your favorite store where you have shopped, your parents have shopped, your grandparents have shopped. So therefore, there is a lot of value in that. So some of this is also recalibrating itself. So I think in a sense, consumer goods industry, if they are sharp and if they are bold, they have new opportunities, and they also have to jettison some of the old legacies that they're carrying. And companies which are able to do it, I think Aditi will be coming out better from this, as indeed it happens in every crisis. Every crisis throws up a couple of winners and a couple of people who have lost it. And by and large, it is embracing the new trends, acting on it, sustaining it, and pivoting on it that matters. And if companies can do it, good luck to them.
Well, thank you so much, but we always run out of time and we apologize if we were not able to come to your question. But I'm just going to repeat some of the stuff that's coming on the chat. This is such an honor to listen to your wisdom. Yes, an honor to get enlightened by your words. Thank you so much for giving us the time. Wonderful session, so much to learn. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Much needed motivation. It's an honor listening to your inspiring words. Excellent talk, very motivating to see such a clear thinker. I think that really sums it up. I mean, really, the clarity and the openness with which you spoke. So, on behalf of Lean in India and Sipping Thoughts, we thank you for joining us today. And any last words before we sign off for the evening?
Thank you, Sukirti, and thank you, Urvi, and thank you both for very kindly hosting me. I think I'm privileged to talk to you all. I have simple words of learning, so there's nothing complicated, nothing out of the ordinary, but a strong conviction. And I do hope and I do pray that all of you and your listeners keep safe, that you seek happiness, that you seek value in your own contributions. And this is a time when you need to reach out to as many people as you can in any manner, to help them, to support them, to listen to them, and if possible, to be able to direct their lives in a better path. I think this is a time when humanity, decency, humility, and empathy, and above all compassion, really matters. And you as women are enormously blessed to have this in abundance. So good luck and all the very best to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I wish everyone a very, very good night. Thank you, Suresh, once again for joining us.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.